My name is Ruby Johnson. I'm 73 years old from Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm about to tell you how my hired nurse Tiffany thought she could drug me with my own medications and steal my prescriptions to fuel her addiction, not knowing she'd picked the wrong patient to abuse. You see, I'd spent 35 years as a pharmacist at Methodist University Hospital, specializing in medication management and drug abuse detection, which taught me exactly how prescription theft schemes work and how to catch the criminals who prey on elderly patients. It started 10 months ago when I hired Tiffany Collins as my live-in caregiver after recovering from hip replacement surgery. At 73, managing daily activities was challenging, and my doctor recommended professional home health care to ensure proper medication management and physical therapy compliance. Tiffany came with excellent references, nursing credentials, and 5 years of geriatric care experience. Mrs. Johnson, I'm here to make sure you get the best possible care, Tiffany said during our first meeting. I'll handle your medications, coordinate with your doctors, and help you regain your independence safely. Initially, Tiffany seemed perfect. She was organized, professional, and attentive to my needs. She managed my prescription schedule, coordinated doctor appointments, and helped with physical therapy exercises. My family was impressed with her dedication and my apparent progress under her care. But after 3 months, I began experiencing unusual symptoms that had nothing to do with my hip recovery. Extreme drowsiness during the day, memory confusion, difficulty concentrating, and dizzy spells that left me unsteady and vulnerable. When I mentioned these problems to Tiffany, she'd reassure me they were normal side effects of my pain medications. Mrs. Johnson, these medications are strong and your body is still adjusting, Tiffany would explain. The doctor said drowsiness and confusion are expected. I'll monitor your symptoms and adjust the timing if needed. The first real warning sign came when my pharmacist, David Chen at Methodist Hospital Pharmacy, called with concerning questions about my prescription refills. Mrs. Ruby, I'm seeing some unusual patterns in your medication requests, David said during his call. You're refilling pain medications much faster than prescribed, and there are requests for prescriptions I don't have on file from your doctors. David, I don't understand. Tiffany handles all my medications. She's the one who calls in refills and picks up prescriptions. Mrs. Ruby, according to our records, someone claiming to be you has been requesting early refills on controlled substances and asking about cash payments for medications not covered by insurance. That evening, I started paying closer attention to Tiffany's medication management. What I discovered made my blood run cold as I realized the scope of her criminal operation. She was giving me double doses of sedatives to keep me confused and compliant, stealing portions of my pain medications for her personal use, and forging prescription requests to obtain controlled substances she could sell on the street. My medicine cabinet, which should have contained a month's supply of each prescription, was nearly empty after just 2 weeks. But the most shocking discovery came when I pretended to be asleep and overheard Tiffany talking to someone on the phone about her drug dealing operation. I've got access to high-quality pain meds, anxiety pills, and sleep aids, she was saying. My patient is old and confused, so she doesn't track what she's taking. I can get you whatever you need for the right price. My own caregiver was using my home as headquarters for a prescription drug dealing ring, poisoning me with my own medications to keep me incapacitated while she stole from me and endangered my life. But Tiffany made one fatal mistake in her criminal scheme. She forgot that her vulnerable elderly patient wasn't just some confused woman who couldn't fight back. I was Ruby Johnson, who'd spent 35 years at Methodist Hospital learning exactly how prescription drug crimes worked and how to build cases that sent criminals to federal prison. That night, I lay in my bed processing the magnitude of Tiffany's betrayal and began planning the investigation that would destroy her life and career forever. She thought she was dealing with a helpless elderly woman who couldn't expose her crimes. Instead, she'd chosen to drug and rob someone who knew exactly how to catch prescription thieves and make sure they faced the maximum legal consequences. The undercover operation was about to begin, and only one of us was walking away with freedom. Before I tell you how I went undercover to destroy Tiffany's criminal operation, you need to understand the expertise she was stealing from and the lifetime of pharmaceutical knowledge that made her scheme so personally offensive. Every pill Tiffany stole represented decades of professional dedication to medication, safety, and patient protection that she was perverting for criminal profit. I started at Methodist University Hospital in 1979 as a pharmacy technician. Fresh out of the University of Tennessee with a pharmacy degree and determination to build a career helping patients manage their medications safely. While other young women were starting families and choosing comfortable paths, I was working night shifts, learning complex drug interactions, and building expertise in controlled substance management. By 1985, I'd earned my PharmD and specialized in geriatric medication management, becoming one of the hospital's leading experts in preventing drug abuse and identifying prescription fraud. My salary had grown to $62,000 annually, excellent money for Memphis in those days, but more importantly, I was saving lives by catching medication errors and criminal schemes. My expertise became legendary throughout the Memphis medical community. Doctors would consult me about complex drug interactions. Nurses would ask my advice about patient medication compliance, and law enforcement would request my assistance in investigating prescription fraud cases. Over 35 years, I'd helped prosecute dozens of healthcare workers who stole medications from vulnerable patients. During my career, I'd seen every type of prescription abuse scheme imaginable. Nurses who diluted patient pain medications and kept the excess for personal use. Caregivers who forged prescription requests and sold controlled substances. Healthcare workers who overdosed elderly patients to cover their medication theft. I knew the warning signs, the criminal patterns, and the evidence needed for successful prosecution. When I retired in 2018 after 35 years of service, my pension was worth $4,100 monthly, and I'd accumulated $420,000 in retirement savings. I owned my East Memphis home free and clear, now worth $285,000, and had comprehensive health insurance that covered my medical needs, including prescription medications. My medication regimen was carefully managed and legitimately prescribed. Moderate pain medication for arthritis, blood pressure medication, cholesterol management, and sleep aids for occasional insomnia. Nothing excessive, nothing inappropriate, and nothing that should have required early refills or unusual dosing adjustments. But I wasn't just financially comfortable. I was professionally connected throughout Memphis's healthcare system. My former colleagues at Methodist Hospital, relationships with local pharmacists, and contacts in law enforcement created a network that could investigate criminal activity comprehensively and discreetly. During my retirement years, I'd occasionally consulted on prescription fraud cases, helping attorneys and law enforcement understand complex medication schemes and build cases against healthcare criminals. My expertise was still valued, my reputation was still respected, and my knowledge was still current. When Tiffany began her criminal operation in my home, she was stealing from someone who understood every aspect of her scheme better than she did. Every forged prescription, every medication diversion, every illegal sale. I recognized the patterns from 35 years of catching identical criminals. More importantly, Tiffany was endangering the life of someone who dedicated her career to preventing exactly the crimes she was committing. The double dosing that left me confused and vulnerable wasn't just theft, it was assault on a patient by someone who'd sworn to provide professional care. The controlled substances she was stealing and selling weren't just pills. They were medications I needed for legitimate medical conditions, prescribed by doctors who trusted my caregiver to administer them properly. Every stolen dose meant I wasn't receiving prescribed treatment while she profited from my medical needs. But Tiffany's biggest mistake was underestimating the investigative capacity of her victim. She saw an elderly woman recovering from surgery and assumed I was too confused or dependent to notice sophisticated medication manipulation. She forgot to research her target's professional background before choosing her victim. What Tiffany didn't know was that Ruby Johnson had spent 35 years learning exactly how prescription criminals operated, what evidence was needed to convict them, and how to coordinate with law enforcement to build airtight cases that resulted in maximum sentences. The knowledge she was stealing from was about to become the expertise that destroyed her life and career forever. She thought she'd found the perfect victim in a vulnerable elderly patient. Instead, she'd chosen to drug and rob a retired pharmacist who knew exactly how to catch her and make sure she never hurt another patient again. What I did next would have impressed my former law enforcement colleagues. I designed and executed a comprehensive undercover operation to document Tiffany's criminal enterprise using the same investigative techniques that had made me legendary in prescription fraud detection during my hospital career. The morning after discovering Tiffany's drug-dealing phone conversation, I began implementing a strategy that would capture every aspect of her criminal operation. My first step was securing covert recording equipment and hidden cameras to document her medication theft and illegal sales activities. I contacted Marcus Williams, a private investigator I'd worked with on several hospital fraud cases during my career. Marcus, I need surveillance equipment that can record prescription theft and drug dealing without detection. Mrs. Ruby, do you think your caregiver is stealing your medications? Marcus, I know she's stealing my medications, overdosing me to keep me compliant, and using my home as headquarters for a prescription drug ring. I need evidence that will send her to federal prison. Within 24 hours, Marcus had installed hidden cameras in my bedroom, bathroom, and kitchen, areas where Tiffany handled my medications. He also provided me with a small digital recorder disguised as a medical alert device that would capture conversations without suspicion. But recording equipment was only the beginning of my investigation. I needed to document the medical evidence of how Tiffany was poisoning me with overdoses of my own prescriptions. My next call was to Dr. Patricia Henderson, my primary physician who'd been managing my post-surgery care. Dr. Henderson, I need to discuss some concerning symptoms and request comprehensive blood work to check my medication levels. Mrs. Johnson, what symptoms are you experiencing? Excessive sedation, memory problems, and confusion that seem inconsistent with my prescribed medication dosages. I suspect my caregiver may be administering incorrect amounts. Dr. Henderson immediately ordered blood tests that would show exactly what medications were in my system and at what concentrations. The results would prove whether Tiffany was overdosing me with my own prescriptions. Simultaneously, I contacted David Chen at Methodist Hospital Pharmacy to coordinate monitoring of prescription refill requests and any unusual activities related to my medication accounts. David, I need you to flag my account for any early refill requests, cash payments, or attempts to obtain prescriptions I haven't authorized. I suspect my caregiver is committing prescription fraud using my identity. Mrs. Ruby will monitor everything and document any suspicious activities. If someone tries to illegally obtain controlled substances using your information, we'll have complete records. The undercover operation began with me pretending to be more confused and helpless than I actually was, giving Tiffany confidence to expand her criminal activities while I documented everything. Over the next month, my hidden cameras captured Tiffany stealing pills from my prescription bottles, diluting liquid medications to hide theft, and preparing excessive doses that left me sedated and vulnerable. The recordings showed her systematically pilfering controlled substances while giving me dangerous overdoses to cover her theft. But the most damaging evidence came when I recorded Tiffany's drug-dealing activities directly in my home. My hidden cameras captured her meeting with buyers, exchanging stolen prescription medications for cash, and using my kitchen table to count money from illegal sales. "I can get you 60 OxyContin pills for $800. I recorded her telling one buyer, "My patient gets more than she needs, so I have a steady supply." The blood work Dr. Henderson ordered confirmed my suspicions. I had dangerously high levels of sedatives and pain medications in my system, far exceeding my prescribed dosages. Tiffany was systematically poisoning me to keep me incapacitated while she operated her drug ring from my home. David Chen's pharmacy monitoring revealed even more criminal activity. Someone using my identity had attempted to fill forged prescriptions at 3 different pharmacies, requesting early refills on controlled substances and offering cash payments for medications not covered by insurance. "Mrs. Ruby, your caregiver has been systematically attempting prescription fraud across Memphis," David reported. "We have documentation of multiple illegal attempts to obtain controlled substances using your patient information." After 6 weeks of undercover investigation, I had comprehensive evidence of Tiffany's criminal enterprise, video recordings of medication theft, audio recordings of drug sales, medical evidence of patient poisoning, and pharmacy documentation of prescription fraud. But I wasn't finished with my investigation yet. I wanted to document the full scope of Tiffany's operation and identify all her criminal associates before law enforcement moved against her. The evidence I'd gathered wasn't just enough to convict Tiffany. It was enough to destroy the entire prescription drug ring she was operating from my home while poisoning me with my own medications. Tiffany thought she was dealing with a confused elderly patient who couldn't detect sophisticated medication manipulation. Instead, she'd chosen to victimize a retired pharmacist who'd spent 35 years perfecting techniques for catching prescription criminals and building cases that sent them to federal prison for decades. The next phase of my operation involved something that would have made my former law enforcement colleagues proud, coordinating with federal authorities to conduct a comprehensive sting operation that would capture Tiffany's entire criminal network and ensure maximum prosecution for everyone involved in her prescription drug ring. My first call was to DEA Special Agent Lisa Rodriguez, who'd worked with me on several prescription fraud cases during my hospital career. When her assistant announced me, Lisa took the call immediately. "Ruby Johnson, the legendary Methodist Hospital pharmacist. What brings you back into federal drug enforcement?" "Lisa, I need to report a comprehensive prescription drug operation being run from my home by my hired caregiver. And I have 6 weeks of undercover evidence documenting the entire criminal enterprise." For the next 2 hours, I briefed Lisa on Tiffany's operation with the systematic precision I'd used in dozens of federal consultations. The hidden camera footage, audio recordings of drug sales, medical evidence of patient poisoning, and pharmacy documentation of prescription fraud created a federal prosecutor's dream case. "Ruby, your caregiver isn't just committing elder abuse. She's running a sophisticated controlled substance distribution ring using patient identity theft and medical access fraud. This is going to result in serious federal charges. Lisa, I want this investigation to destroy every aspect of Tiffany's operation and send a message to other healthcare workers who prey on vulnerable patients." That afternoon, Lisa coordinated with the FBI Healthcare Fraud Division to launch a comprehensive investigation targeting Tiffany's drug ring and all associated criminal activities. The federal investigation revealed that Tiffany's operation was far more extensive than even I had realized. She wasn't just stealing from me. She was operating similar schemes with 3 other elderly patients, systematically drugging them and stealing their prescriptions to supply a network of drug dealers throughout Memphis. Ruby, Your caregiver has been poisoning multiple elderly patients and operating a controlled substance distribution network worth over $200,000 annually, Agent Rodriguez reported. We've identified at least 15 people involved in buying and selling the medications she's been stealing. The federal sting operation began with me wearing a wire during Tiffany's drug deals to capture her criminal associates on audio and video. My 35 years of pharmaceutical expertise allowed me to ask technical questions that revealed the scope of her operation. Tiffany, how do you ensure consistent supply when patients' prescriptions change? I asked during one recorded conversation. Mrs. Johnson, I have multiple sources. You're not my only client. I've learned how to manage several patients' medications to maintain steady inventory for my buyers. That admission, captured on federal recording equipment, proved Tiffany was operating a systematic elder abuse scheme targeting multiple vulnerable patients simultaneously. The controlled buy operations were conducted with federal agents posing as drug buyers while I provided pharmaceutical expertise to ensure accurate documentation of controlled substance transactions. Every pill Tiffany sold was traced, weighed, and cataloged as evidence in the federal case. But the most satisfying moment came when federal agents executed search warrants simultaneously at Tiffany's apartment, my home, and the locations of her known associates. The coordinated raids captured the entire criminal network in a single operation. Ruby, we recovered over $75,000 in cash, 2,400 stolen prescription pills, and complete records of her drug-dealing operation, Agent Rodriguez reported after the raids. Your evidence made this one of the most comprehensive healthcare fraud busts in Tennessee history. The federal charges were devastating: conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, healthcare fraud, elder abuse, patient endangerment, identity theft, and racketeering. Tiffany was facing 30 years to life in federal prison, but I wanted more than criminal prosecution. I wanted professional consequences that would ensure Tiffany and her associates could never work in healthcare again. My testimony before the Tennessee Board of Nursing resulted in immediate license revocation for Tiffany and an investigation of every healthcare facility that had employed her. The board's investigation revealed she'd been stealing medications from patients for over 3 years. The federal prosecution moved swiftly with overwhelming evidence. Tiffany's own recorded admissions, combined with the physical evidence and victim testimony, created such a strong case that her court-appointed attorney recommended accepting the government's plea offer. Mrs. Johnson, the defendant wants to negotiate a plea agreement, federal prosecutor David Wilson reported. She's offering full cooperation and enhanced restitution in exchange for reduced sentencing. Mr. Wilson, Tiffany Collins can make all the deals she wants with federal prosecutors. But there's no deal that will give her back her nursing license, her reputation, or her ability to work in healthcare again. Some consequences are permanent. Tiffany pleaded guilty to all federal charges: 15 years in federal prison, complete restitution of $120,000 to her victims, and permanent prohibition from working in any healthcare capacity. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for 2 months later, but Tiffany's career destruction was already complete. She would never work as a nurse, caregiver, or in any position involving patient care again. Tiffany thought she was drugging and robbing a helpless elderly woman who couldn't fight back. Instead, she'd chosen to victimize a retired pharmacist who'd spent 35 years learning exactly how to coordinate with federal authorities to destroy prescription drug criminals permanently. The final destruction of Tiffany's life unfolded exactly as federal law enforcement intended, with systematic precision that left her imprisoned, professionally ruined, and permanently marked as a healthcare criminal who had betrayed the most vulnerable patients under her care. Today, Tiffany is serving year 2 of her 15-year sentence at Federal Medical Center Carswell in Texas, with no possibility of early release due to the severity of her crimes against elderly patients. She won't be eligible for parole until 2037, having spent the prime of her career in federal prison for prescription drug trafficking and elder abuse. But the criminal conviction was only the beginning of Tiffany's permanent destruction. The professional licensing consequences marked her for life as a healthcare criminal who could never be trusted with patient care. Again, the Tennessee Board of Nursing permanently revoked her license and placed her on the National Practitioner Data Bank, ensuring that no healthcare facility in America would ever employ her again. Every background check for the rest of her life would show her federal conviction for drugging and robbing elderly patients. The federal investigation also destroyed her criminal network completely. All 15 associates were prosecuted and convicted, with sentences ranging from 3 to 12 years in federal prison. The entire Memphis prescription drug ring was dismantled permanently, but I wasn't finished seeking justice yet. I wanted the healthcare community to understand how Tiffany's crimes could have been prevented and what warning signs other families should recognize when hiring caregivers. Methodist University Hospital established the Ruby Johnson Patient Protection Protocol, requiring comprehensive background checks, medication monitoring systems, and regular drug testing for all healthcare workers with access to controlled substances. Mrs. Johnson's case showed us how healthcare professionals can abuse their access to exploit vulnerable patients. Dr. Patricia Henderson explained during the protocol announcement, no patient should ever be poisoned by the people hired to protect them. The Memphis healthcare community responded with horror and determination to prevent similar crimes. Word spread quickly throughout medical circles that Ruby Johnson had caught her own caregiver operating a prescription drug ring and coordinated with federal authorities to achieve complete prosecution. Miss Ruby showed every one of us what happens when you try to take advantage of the wrong patient. Sister Williams told me after Sunday service at Mint Olive Baptist Church. That girl thought she was dealing with some helpless old woman, but she picked someone who'd spent her whole life catching criminals just like her. 6 months after Tiffany's sentencing, I received a letter from her in federal prison, a desperate plea for forgiveness from the woman who'd tried to poison me for drug money. Mrs. Johnson, I know what I did was wrong, and I've had 2 years in prison to think about my choices. I was addicted to pain medication and made terrible decisions that hurt you and other patients. I'm hoping you might consider supporting my appeal for reduced sentencing. I responded with the same professional precision I'd used throughout my pharmaceutical career. Tiffany, you systematically drugged me with dangerous overdoses of my own medications, stole controlled substances prescribed for my legitimate medical needs, and operated a criminal enterprise from my home while I trusted you with my care and safety. Your crimes weren't mistakes caused by addiction. They were calculated decisions to prey on vulnerable elderly patients for financial gain. You poisoned me to keep me compliant, while you robbed me and endangered my life. Your 15-year sentence represents justice for every patient you harmed and protection for every elderly person you won't be able to victimize in the future. Don't contact me again. The pharmacist who caught you has no interest in helping the criminal who tried to poison her. Today, I'm 76 years old, living independently in my East Memphis home, with complete recovery from my hip surgery and full cognitive function restored after months of being systematically poisoned. The restitution money Tiffany paid has been donated to elder abuse prevention programs. I used my experience to help establish the Tennessee Elder Protection Network, providing education to families about recognizing healthcare fraud and protecting vulnerable relatives from criminal caregivers. Every month, I receive calls from families who suspect their hired caregivers are stealing medications or abusing elderly relatives. My expertise helps them document evidence and coordinate with law enforcement to achieve successful prosecution. People sometimes ask if I regret hiring Tiffany and going through months of being drugged and robbed. But I sleep peacefully every night, knowing I caught a dangerous criminal and taught her the most important lesson of her life. When you prey on vulnerable patients, you eventually target someone who knows exactly how to destroy you. Tiffany thought she'd found the perfect victim in an elderly woman recovering from surgery. Instead, she learned that some patients spent their careers learning exactly how to catch healthcare criminals and coordinate with federal authorities to ensure they never hurt anyone again. The last thing I want to say is this: trust your medical instincts. Monitor your medications carefully, and never assume that healthcare credentials mean someone won't abuse their access to harm you. When caregivers become criminals, protecting yourself isn't personal. It's exactly what they deserve. Because when people use medical knowledge to commit crimes against the patients they're supposed to protect, the only response is to use that same knowledge to make sure they spend their lives in prison, where they can't hurt anyone else. Thank you for listening to today's story from Granny Story Corner. Life teaches us lessons in the most unexpected ways, doesn't it? If this story touched your heart, please subscribe for more real-life tales that remind us of our shared humanity. Until next time, may your own story be filled with wisdom and love.